Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Love Procurement Podcast. My name is Kelly Barner, and I'll be your host for today's conversation. I'm glad to welcome Joseph Tonye to the show. Joseph is Ivalua's Global ESG Director, a role that allows him to guide the company's social and environmental impact, and also to understand what Ivalua's customers are working on through their own ESG journeys. So, hi, Joseph. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Luckily, thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here to discuss this very interesting and important topic as well. Thank
Absolutely. And
you.
we're looking forward to learning from your expertise. But before we go there, let's learn a little bit about your background because it might not be what everybody would expect. What can you share about your professional journey to this point?
Sure, Kelly. So I have a background in sales, indirect sales, customer relationship, and partnership management. And so I joined Ivalua in 2022. And a few months later, I transitioned to the newly created role, the ESG role within the organization. So it was a real opportunity for me to align my competencies, my skills, and my principles and values with this new opportunity and the goals that we want to advance within the company. So I know sales and partnership management could sound a bit different, but in some way there is also an opportunity to continue to work and leverage the competencies I have acquired in the past through, by collaborating with internal and external stakeholders. Driving performance is also important in the ESG world, and also, assessing risk and opportunities in general, and making a positive impact, hopefully.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, as you have gone on your own learning journey and also had a lot of conversations about this topic, I would be interested to know what's maybe, if one thing people assume wrongly about ESG, what would they be? Are there any major misconceptions out there?
Yes, I would say one of the misconceptions might be around, thinking that ESG is only about philanthropic initiatives or CSR, as you say, like corporate social responsibility, which is great, right? Making a positive impact on people and the environment. But ESG goes beyond this philanthropic aspect. It's also about assessing risk and opportunities across environmental, social, and governance practices. So basically, it's a framework to use to assess a company's impact on people, the environment, as well as potential risk and opportunities across the various areas of sustainability. So it comes with data, KPIs, metrics, external communication, transparency, reporting practices.
Yeah.
So it's based on the sustainability, on the foundations and the principles of sustainability, and it comes with additional metrics and numbers, I would say.
Now, just to understand a little bit about where Ivalua is on this journey before we get into the topic generally, the company recently released the first ESG report. Why do you think this is an important formal step for you and your team?
Yes, and thank you for mentioning it, Kelly. I think it's an important step. So first, it has been a collaborative effort internally. So working together with various departments and teams to gather the data, to understand first why it's important for us, why it's important for our ecosystem, and also what type of data and information we want to report on. And once we figure out the purpose and the objective, then the goal is to release the sustainability report publicly, externally. And I think it's an important step because first, it helps us track and measure the progress that has been made over the past few years. It's also a way for us to set targets and measurable quantitative goals and objectives for the coming years to drive continuous progress.
Yeah.
And in parallel, it's also a good way for us to increase external communication with partners, suppliers, maybe candidates or employees as well internally, and customers, because there is a growing interest in sustainability. so that everyone can understand what we are doing at the moment and what we want to achieve, what type of goals we want to meet in the future.
Yeah. Now, one of the comments that you made previously that I actually really appreciate is this idea of ESG going far beyond philanthropy. So it's certainly not just that, but there does also need to be an alignment with company values, or as some people might say, what is your why for doing whatever it is that you're investing energy in? How does Ivalua's ESG program align with or support the values that are key to the company culture?
That's a great point, and that's why I think I have the privilege to work for a company with strong values and a true commitment to sustainability. And I think that our commitment to sustainability is reflected in our values. When you think about the 5 core values of the company, which are collaboration, care and grow, customer-centric, results-oriented, but also integrity. I think I can give you a few examples, like
Sure.
collaboration, care and grow. We provide free access to learning and development resources to all employees. In 2024, we have provided an average of 60 hours of training per employee.
Wow.
And of course, I think the company has built an environment that values diversity of roles, profiles, skills, and competencies. So diversity is part of the company's DNA. This is very important because I think this is reflected in our achievements in 2024. We have like more than 100 employees that have been promoted. A company of 1,000 people working across 17 offices globally. 3 major regions, including AMER, EMEA, and APAC. So as you can see, we have a few, I would say, examples that can reflect and resonate with the values. Integrity, of course, because we have strong policies.
Absolutely.
We also provide training to make sure that employees are aligned with the principles of the company, and also to prevent discrimination and harassment within the company and ensure fair business practices. And when we think about customer-centric, it's also important for us because sustainability is also like our customers, they have ESG goals. They want to advance their ESG programs through procurement, for instance. And this is how we can help also through the solution. So care and grow, collaboration, integrity, customer-centric, and finally, results-oriented, because we mentioned before the reporting practices that we are looking to enhance. This is also an example about the why and how the company strategy is driven by data and achievements. And hopefully we will continue to progress on this.
Now, we're going to talk a lot today about the role that procurement has an opportunity to play within ESG. But before we do that, and we'll make a little light of this, but I think it'll be educational. Procurement always gets teased about our terminology and our TLAs, right? Our 3-letter acronyms. And maybe this actually makes us very well suited for ESG because there are a lot of acronyms in this space as well. So before we dig into the details, I actually want to run through some of these acronyms just to make sure everybody's sort of on the same communications footing. So we know ESG is environmental, social, and governance related programs, but there's a lot of different types of efforts that could be covered by that umbrella. What are some examples of the initiatives that might be included in a typical ESG program?
Yes. So as you said, ESG can cover a lot of various topics. So a few examples. Usually we have topics such as carbon assessment, carbon emissions reduction, waste management also, because the goal for us as a company is to reduce our impact on the environment, so the negative impact on the environment. And we have a focus on emissions reduction, Scope 3 emissions reduction. So Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 are also part of the list, I think. With Scope 3 referring to purchase goods and services or activities and assets that we do not directly control. When it comes to the S, so the social aspect or the social dimension, we talk about initiatives such as diversity and inclusion. I'm sure you heard about it before. Learning and development. So everything about people development, skills development, but also inclusion, philanthropy, corporate social responsibility. In fact, so CSR is another acronym, and CSR is more about making a positive impact on people and the environment. It's not necessarily driven by regulation or like a data-driven approach, but it's more like a voluntary initiative or approach position to sustainability. And G, policies, reporting, laws, and regulation in general.
Yeah. And so those regulations, of course, have their own acronyms. So let's hit a couple of those. What is CSRD?
Yes, big topic, right? Big topic because as many other companies, we need to prepare for this new directive. So in fact, the European Union has established this directive to. In fact, this directive requires large companies and listed companies in the EU to disclose detailed information about their environmental, social, and governance practices. So impact, risk, and opportunities. So in fact, it's a way for the European Union and Commission to increase transparency and external communication around what companies are doing in terms of sustainability.
And then one more, GRI standards. What are those?
GRI. So I think I'm pretty familiar now with this acronym because we have used the GRI standards actually to establish our first sustainability report. And in fact, it's a framework of guidelines to help companies disclose their environmental, social, and governance metrics and actions in a consistent manner. So as mentioned before, for instance, the CSRD will use different standards called the ESRS. GRI is one also of the most common guidelines and framework used to report on these metrics. This is very important because it's a way it enables companies to understand what is important to disclose in terms of metrics, information for external communication, external stakeholders, including customers, partners, investors. And at the same time, it helps us understand how we can disclose this information. So basically, once we understand the guidelines, we can leverage these to draft and develop our sustainability report with the most important and consistent information.
Yeah. Now let's bring this back to procurement.
Yes.
What role do you see procurement teams playing in overall corporate ESG programs?
I think in general, so previously we mentioned Scope 3 emissions. And Scope 3 includes purchased goods and services. So as a company, when you're looking to improve or reduce your emissions or improve your sustainability impact, as a company, we look at our direct impact, so actions, initiatives, or operations, sorry. But we also look at what the suppliers in the value chain are doing. What is their impact, right? And how we can mitigate this impact across the value chain. In fact, as a responsible company, our commitment and accountability goes beyond the walls of the company. It goes across the value chain. That's why we have a responsibility to understand what is happening, in fact, across the supply chain. So procurement can help reduce Scope 3 emissions by selecting responsible suppliers, by measuring the impact, the environmental impact of a specific product or service that has been purchased. And so by doing this, procurement teams can help reduce emissions. They can also help engage with more responsible suppliers or continue to work with the same suppliers exist in supply chain base, but through collaborative efforts, collaboration plans to reduce emissions together, or to improve social impact through labor or human rights compliance, or through philanthropic initiatives. So yes, I think procurement teams can have a huge impact.
Now, because so much of ESG is involved with either reporting or regulation, the next thought that brings to mind is naturally data. And certainly procurement spends a lot of time, right? Especially when you're out on the supply base, into the supply chain, monitoring, gathering, enriching data. But data can also be a huge challenge. What have you found, and what do you hear from other conversations that you've had around sort of the beginning state of most of the data that is required to monitor these impacts and then start to compile the reports?
Yes, I have some good memories about but because I think it can be challenging sometimes, right? Because you know that you have to build and create your sustainability report. First, you need to understand what type of data, KPIs, and metrics you want to report on, you want to share publicly. And, you need to understand what is the message that you want to share as well. And then comes this phase that you just mentioned, which is about data collection. And so GRI standards that we mentioned before is actually a very powerful tool that we have used to understand what type of data we want to collect. And then the next step is, where is the data? Where is the information internally within the organization? And data is often fragmented and scattered across different departments and systems. And sometimes there are also some activities that we do not naturally or spontaneously measure, such as waste management, for instance, the weight of waste that has been collected and recycled over the course of the year. Just an example, right? So I think can be challenging. So to understand where is the data, and then it's a lot of collaboration with these various departments to collect the data and to understand what is the purpose behind this, so that everyone can feel concerned, engaged, and accountable, because then we need to continue to track this data over the coming years. And then the goal is to structure and organize kind of governance to have this data available that we can use not only for sustainability report, but also to track the progress that has been made over the months, the years, and just continue to overachieve and drive performance.
So most companies, this is likely to be sort of an ongoing process, because as you set your objectives, it's figuring out, okay, what data do we have? Does that data support the type of reporting we want to provide? And then to your point, there may be things that are happening that just aren't being tracked, that the activity is taking place, but there's not necessarily a central source of data. And so is your advice, having now gone through this and gotten to the point where you as a company are releasing your first report, is it sort of a just start and don't get discouraged, but keep moving forward, right? As you identify sort of these pockets of need, do you think of it as sort of a continuing effort where, okay, we've identified something that aligns with our objectives. We weren't tracking it historically, but now we know we need to track it so that it gets added to a future report. Is that the sort of mindset that you have to take to this sort of reporting effort?
Yeah, definitely, Kelly. And I think it's a good advice for us, for everyone, because I can give you another example, previously we talked about Scope 3 emissions and our efforts to reduce emissions in the future, with a focus for us on travel emissions, so business travel. So it's a huge focus for us, it's a huge priority for us. And so, which means that it's important for us to track the emissions over the months on a monthly basis, maybe per region, per department, to understand where we are at a certain point, right, at a specific time over the year, and how we can, because first it's important for everyone to understand what we are doing and what is our impact, because just building the strategy without communicating internally or externally is less impactful, because to reduce travel emissions, for instance, we need the help of everyone, right? We need the engagement and collaboration of everyone within the company. So this data collection and governance effort is not only about sustainable reporting, it's also about engaging people to make change, right? And for that, we need to do it on a regular basis, and also with precise numbers and metrics. Yeah.
Well, and I think the example about business travel is an interesting one because it calls attention to the connection between what a company does, right, to make money and what their ESG program is going to look like. If I value manufactured shoes, you would have very different objectives and priorities.
Yes.
If I value offered transportation services, you would have very different objectives and priorities. And so yes, there are these overarching standards, but there's still a whole process for each company saying, what do we do? Where can we have the greatest impact, right? Which are our objectives going to be? Was this a series of conversations that happened internally that you got to be a part of? Or was it pretty clear from the outset that, for instance, something like business travel was going to be a high impact or a high impact opportunity to start tracking and measuring and discussing?
Yes, and I think it's a good transition with a topic called it's not an acronym, but it's another it's another concept, which is it's not a concept, but a kind of tool that we use, that we have used, which is the double materiality assessment. It's a kind of foundation for an ESG strategy to be created.
Yeah.
So the double materiality assessment or analysis helped us understand what are the priority topics, the material topics that we want to focus on, and to determine if a topic, a sustainability topic, is material or not. We need to understand the level of impact that we have as a company, and also the level of risk and opportunity. So for instance, climate change. Do we have a positive or negative impact on climate change? Yes, we have an impact because we do travel across the regions, the world, right? Due to the nature of our activity. And then we can face potential risk associated with climate change in terms of, in case of natural disasters, even reputational risk if we do not take action because our stakeholders could think that we are not doing enough for the environment, for instance. So once we have assessed the various sustainability topics from an impact, risk, and opportunity angle, we can decide to determine if a topic is material or not, with a certain level of granularity, right? Travel emissions being one of the very specific topics. So this is a discussion that we had together with the leadership team to understand where we're at, what is important for us, what is important for our ecosystem. I don't want to forget about that, because I think it's important to mention that we look at company itself, but we also look at the entire ecosystem.
Sure.
Because we work together with our customers, our partners, our employees, right? So it's a common effort. And once we have identified this, we can then decide to prioritize actions, initiatives associated with these various topics that have been identified through the assessment.
Now, once a topic has been prioritized, so we can even stay with the business travel example,
yes.
How do you keep the effort visible so that whether someone's a partner or whether they're an employee, they remember that they have an opportunity to have this positive impact, or maybe they see how things are trending and it keeps it top of mind as they make decisions? How do you ensure that visibility throughout the year at all the distributed points of buying and decision making in the company?
Yes, it is important to communicate on a regular basis, because it's a continuous effort. So, for instance, I can give you an example related to that. For Earth Day in April, we have organized the Global Earth Week at Ivalua, which is an event where we organize a series of events during the week to raise awareness on climate change and how employees also can contribute positively to reduce environmental impact. So this is an example, right, from an internal standpoint. Externally, we have this new sustainability report, but we also aim to, we plan to further engage with our ecosystem, including our partners, with joint initiatives, and also by advocating, sharing best practices with our customers during events such as Ivalua now, with our marketing team sharing best practices and advocating for sustainable procurement practices. So this is a way for us to, to maintain this level of communication, engagement on a regular basis. Yes.
So we've talked a lot about the environmental sustainability impact. We've talked a little bit about governance through regulations and data collection and reporting, but I definitely don't want to overlook that S sandwiched in the middle there. How is Ivalua investing in social impact?
Yes, it's very important, right? Because we talked about the values of the companies before, and when we look at the S, I would say that first, the company values diversity of thoughts, skills, competencies, profiles. So I think that there is a true commitment to social responsibility and equal opportunity within the company. This is part of the company's DNA, right? We have, as mentioned before, we have 17 offices globally. So diversity is definitely a focus for the company. We also take action to prevent discrimination, harassment within the organization with awareness training for all employees. Another example is that we empower women and women collaboration within the organization. And we have initiatives such as Women and Procurement. It's an initiative managed by the marketing team to, for women in tech and procurement to come together, share best practices and share knowledge. And when it comes to senior employees, it's also another social topic. We have signed a charter last year to promote and enhance the role of senior employees within the company. And last but not least, I would say, we plan to create our first CSR committee, allowing all employees to join the committee and take positive actions for the environment and society.
Now, as much as procurement has a massive opportunity to contribute to corporate ESG programs, we're also a space that has a lot of things going on, right? There's a lot of evolution in the procure tech space. Every week, it seems there's some new development related to AI and automation. We're also dealing with a lot of external challenges, whether those be supply disruptions or economic and geopolitical shifts. With all of those things competing for our scarce attention, how do you make sure that ESG doesn't become an afterthought, that it doesn't become something that, well, we'll work on that when things calm down? The reality, of course, being things are never going to calm down. But how do you sort of keep that present at a high level?
Yes. So at high level, so first, I think we also discussed this, we covered this before. I think it's important to make sure that the vision is embedded and the principles are embedded in the various departments and practices of the company so that everyone can feel engaged about the topic. So first, I think it comes from the leadership, and then the vision is shared with the entire organization. And awareness sessions also could be a good example to share this message on a regular basis with the different teams internally. And I think with all these changes that you have mentioned, such as AI, which is a powerful tool, a powerful enabler also for sustainability practices, I think the goal is to just showcase and highlight that changes are good, can be good also for the environment and the society. AI can be leveraged as a powerful tool to enhance and empower procurement teams to further better assess suppliers, for instance, or for data collection automation. So I think these new tools and technologies and changes could go hand in hand with sustainability, right? I think the best and the challenge and maybe the objective is to combine this together so that we can make a good impact.
Now, Joseph, we always like to wrap these conversations with a piece of advice that people can take back with them, right, to their work.
Yeah.
What's something they can put into practice? Maybe they're on their journey towards their first formal ESG report, right? This milestone we've talked about that you've just hit. What piece of advice do you like to offer up, whether that's a general piece of advice to procurement or whether it's to your fellow ESG leads in different
Yes.
types of companies and industries?
Okay, this is not the easiest one. But
We're ending on a hard one.
but we just mentioned the fact that there is a way to, to combine company objectives and technology and changes with sustainability. And I think for me, one of the best ways to create and ensure long-term value, because this is about sustainability is about that, right? It's about long-term value. I think one of the best way to ensure long-term value for present and future generations is to consider impact and risk associated with people, environment, society when we make decisions, like personal or business decisions. So I think the key is to take into consideration the sustainability factors. What is my impact when I take this decision? What are the risks for the planet or for the company that we could face if we take this, if we develop this action plan? And also, what are the opportunities that we can identify together if we take into consideration the planet, the people? So I think maybe an advice, or not sure if this is an advice, but for me, it's my view about sustainability, ESG, and the challenges that we face today, and the objectives that we want to reach in the future, is to take into consideration people, planet, impact, risk when making decisions, so that we can ensure long-term value, and we can make an impact together by acting, hopefully in a more responsible way.
Absolutely. Well, Joseph, I appreciate you being here to share your experience and your expertise. It's been interesting getting sort of a look at the decisions and the process behind, right? Ivalua coming out with this ESG report, which I would definitely encourage everybody to check out and take a look at. It's right on the website, easy to find. Joseph, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Kelly. It has been a real pleasure to discuss this exciting topic with you. Thank you for everything. Thank you.